If you say something that's going to get you canceled, we'll just cut it right out.
Am I allowed to cuss?
Absolutely.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I'd be offended if you didn't, actually. That would be weird.
Yeah. Yeah, no. It's I can do it without, cussing, but it's not my personality.
For sure. For sure. That's good. We want you to be yourself on the Pittsburgh Combat Sports Podcast.
I would hope so, man.
Dude, I will say on that note, just seeing you for the first time in person, you look the part of a fighter dietitian. And I honestly think that's important.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah.
Like you're jacked, dude. Like clearly you know how a body should work.
I try. No, I feel like, especially to have that trust aspect, you have to be in shape. There's tons of dietitians and nutritionists who work in hospitals and whatnot, and they're overweight, and I'm like, that doesn't really fit the part of a nutritionist or a dietitian or anything. And I just, the way that I am, if I'm going to dedicate myself to a craft, I got to 100% go all in. So.
That's good. I've noticed that about you from the jump, which is cool and probably what works really well with you and Matt Brown. So for people listening who don't know Eddie, he runs Immortal Diet Optimization, but also is good friends with Matt Brown. He's obviously wearing an Immortal Training Center rash guard right now. He was just in Charlotte where Matt Brown got his big win over Court McGee, tied the UFC record for knockout. So if you notice Eddie's voice is a little hoarse too, that's why. He was losing his mind a little bit this past weekend.
Yeah, man. I mean, when one of your best friends, someone who, you work with, absolutely blows the roof off the building, you're going to play a part in blowing that roof off.
Yeah.
I mean, it was electric. Other than maybe Brian Battle, arguably, he had the biggest pop.
Hometown crowd for Brian. He had an unfair advantage on that front for sure.
Right, and it's still arguable.
Right.
Matt might have had the biggest pop on that card because when he did that, and people kind of already knew, that's the knockout record. That's a big, big, big deal.
Right.
And it doesn't really register with like me, Matt, Coleman, those guys that, that is the record. Like he's been doing this for 15 years. But the crowd recognized it. They were like,
that's
okay,
huge.
Yeah, that's a massive, massive deal. And to do it in that way to where, he just set it up with the leg kicks and then you think another leg kick's coming and he comes over the top with a right hand. It was picture perfect.
It was nasty, dude. No, so not the first time you've seen Matt knock somebody out in the UFC octagon. Not the second, not the third, not the 12th. The 13th.
The 13th, and there's more on the way.
Unbelievable.
For sure.
That was one of my favorite things because I'll be honest, I obviously know Matt a little bit. I love Matt. I've loved every second I've ever been around him or talked to him in any capacity. I think he's the best. But I don't know him that well, and I was thinking, like, is he going to retire after this fight? He's getting up there, right? Like, obviously, that's the question. Like, would this be his last one? He shut that down pretty quickly in that post-fight speech.
Yeah, the crazy thing about Matt is, yeah, he's 42, but he's a late bloomer.
It's true.
Like, the guy is constantly improving. I mean, we trained together back when I was at Immortal before I moved down to Florida. And the guy came a long way just in the, 3 years that I spent training at Immortal. I mean, it was night and day. So to say he could do this as long as his body allows it to. And, not to toot my own horn, but that weight cut was really good too. So it was a super easy process, and he was smiling through the whole thing. Like, Matt Brown, he's stoic.
Yeah.
All the time. Like the guy, unless he's, around his friends and whatnot, he'll crack jokes and, but that week, I've never seen him smile so much. And even Dorian and Coleman were like, yeah, he's usually not like this fight week. So it felt good, because it let me know, I'm doing my job too. Because I don't always get to be around the fighters during fight week. Like I work with a lot of amateur fighters, a lot of, regional pros. And that's the first time that like I got to spend the entire fight week with one of my fighters that I work with. Obviously, he's my business partner too.
Sure.
But it was beautiful, man, to like be there for him, see him so happy. And then it's funny because he gets out of the cage and he's just back to being stoic.
He enjoyed it for 30 seconds inside the cage, which
Yeah,
that was
man.
such a beautiful quote, by the way. The worst part of doing this is knowing in 30 seconds I got to leave. That's awesome.
And you know, that's him, man.
Yeah.
Like he lives for it. He always says, and I feel like we're kind of cut from the same cloth. Like he wants to die on the mats one day. Like he's going to train the rest of his life, even if his body is, you know, giving him hell. And I'm the same way with lifting weights and training martial arts too. Like I don't plan on ever stopping.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to go until the wheels absolutely fall off, and then I'm going to go a little bit more until I run out of gas, you know?
And just to be clear, you're not stealing John Danaher's style. You were actually training right before this podcast.
Yeah. So this is a shirt. It's a kind of looser fitting shirt. I had to take the rash guard off because it
Little
was
stanky.
Oh yeah, it was bad.
So you were at Stout in the Strip District?
Yeah, man. So I didn't know that they had all those locations, and then you had brought it up. You were like, "Which one are you going to?" I was like,
What do you
I didn't
mean?
know there's more than one."
The
bud."
one? Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I met Lucas, Miguel, and Jesse all down there, so that was cool.
That's awesome, man. So those guys work with you too, and that's actually how I got hooked up with you initially, because we were doing that Fat Factory challenge, and I was like, dude, I might need a professional to help me out with this towards the end, which you did, which I'm glad I get to thank you face to face for, because I wasn't hitting it without you, dude.
Absolutely.
0% chance.
Absolutely,
That
man.
fight week was beautiful.
Yeah. What did we do? It was like 15 pounds.
Yeah, I was 218 point something on Saturday and had to weigh in Friday, 205.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. So right around 13.
13, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I pretty much had to treat you like a fighter on fight week.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way to do the 13 pounds. And then I'm sure you went back to like weighing probably right around 215 right after.
Yeah,
You know?
I think it came right back like that the next day. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy, man.
And I even put you through the rehydration protocol too.
You did.
So
That was perfect. I felt great. Like that night, I felt fine. At weigh-ins, I did not feel super great. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And I don't cut weight. I'm not used to that. It's nothing I ever did before. I didn't wrestle in high school or anything. So that was all a new process for me, which was interesting.
yeah, and you know, having a promotion that you guys do, like it's good to have someone from the promotion go, I actually do know what fight week is like for those guys.
Yeah.
Because you can look at guys who, you know, maybe they didn't have a good weight cut, and you could go, you know, if it's real bad, you can see it now. Whereas you may not have been able to kind of pull those things away from a weight cut and see, okay, maybe this guy's not healthy enough to fight too.
Right.
So
Yeah, it was big. That was a huge reason. There were two primary reasons. One is exactly what you just said. If we, as promoters, and I think all people in general, you see this with all fans, when a fighter misses weight, people talk shit all the time. They're like, how could you possibly miss weight? So I wanted to feel it. I wanted to know what that was like. How could you miss weight? Like, how hard actually is this to do? So that was step one. Step two was we kind of made it an internal company challenge, and I wanted to win the challenge.
right, yeah. You were like, I'm not losing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, like there's a lot of reasons why a guy could miss weight, and it's understandable now. Like,
Yeah.
if you're sick, good luck, man.
Yeah.
Like,
There are valid reasons.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
if you're injured and you can't, like, if you tweak a knee on fight week, good luck, because you can't get on the bike, you can't get on the treadmill. I mean, you could do the sauna and the bath, but in my opinion, those things, they really deplete you too.
Right.
Like, if you don't do the sauna right with the perfect water cut, it's going to take away from you.
Yeah.
And then your knees still hurt, you know?
Exactly.
You're still
Now
going
you got to
in
fight
there
on
hurt.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And mentally, I'm sure too, because as a fighter, you want to be 100% mentally there as well. But if you're going in at a disadvantage, that's got to be in your head the whole time. Like, oh, I had a rough weight cut. I'm not going to be the same. And then that's just plaguing you the whole fight.
Yeah. And, you know, the nice thing is, even if it's not an ideal weight cut, I've got the rehydration down to an absolute science. So I'm 100% confident that every fighter that I work with, they're going to go in there at 100% anyway. Like it's literally not going to matter.
Yeah. Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
That was surprising to me how good I felt, how fast I felt good, I guess is how I'll put it. Because I felt pretty shitty. Danny Palm definitely remembers me on the scale. Like, I was looking a little skeletal that day, and my lips were all dry. Like, my lips have never been that dry in my life. I'm like, I did not even know this level of dryness could exist. But did your rehydration, and by that night, I was having like pizza and chicken and beer, and felt great.
Well, that's obviously not what a fighter would be eating on the night before a fight.
But it was 2 giant containers of liquid IV first.
For sure. Yeah. And, you know, there's food. Like, I always tell the fighters, too, if your body is craving something, as long as it's not unhealthy before a fight, go eat it.
Nice.
Like, if you're craving, you know, Mexican food, just don't let it be spicy, because that's going to cause, you know, gastric issues when you're trying to rehydrate. But go have the carbs, go have the protein. Your body needs that stuff after a weight cut. So, and then you'll see the guys, they get scared to eat still, and I'm like, you have to.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a choice.
It's part of the process.
I need you to go eat.
Yeah. I was really amazed by the fight week diet plan. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. The food I could eat I ate well, even while I was cutting weight. And I think that surprised me for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you still have to, you know, replenish your body with protein. Obviously, you're low on carbs, but you can't go into there compromised. And if you go a week without eating, you're going to go into there compromised.
Yeah.
So you still need the recovery aspect, even if, you know, it's a little bit less than you'd normally be eating.
For sure. What got you into this initially? Because there is an element of you fight and compete and you're around fighters and stuff like that. So you know it to a degree, but there's an element that you specifically bring that is a step above. You've done research, you've put time in, you're clearly very educated about this. So where did that come from? Yeah.
So, when I first went to college, I went to the University of Akron. I was going for athletic training. And just because of, you know, some stuff that was going on with my family, I moved back to Youngstown. And Youngstown State didn't have athletic training. They had exercise science, but I was like, man, I know a lot about exercise already. Like, I could train a baseball player at any time that I want. It's not difficult. And I was like, I want to challenge myself. And I was like, you know what? I don't know anything about nutrition. And I was like, I'll go for nutrition. I'll, you know, just take this 4 years to really delve hardcore into that aspect, because the worst that could happen is I come out of it with great knowledge of nutrition for myself. And then, yeah, it just makes my abilities that much better. Yeah. And at the time I was chasing a baseball dream.
Okay.
Which we could go into that later, but it was just essentially a challenge for myself. And then, you know, when I went to Immortal, those guys didn't have anyone doing their nutrition. So I just started volunteering. I was like, man, I think the first one that I worked with was Josh Pereira.
Okay.
And yeah, he was just a good buddy of mine, and he had lost his first amateur fight, and he hasn't lost since.
I was going to say, that's crazy in retrospect that he lost his first amateur fight.
And it's not because of me, but it's because of that gym and everyone that's surrounding him, and, you know, the effort that he puts in. I play a very, very small part in my eyes to that dude's progress. He's the hardest worker I've ever seen.
Wow. But saying something in that room, especially, man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no one that goes in there and outworks him. And,
wow.
Like, to put it in perspective, he's a 125er. I fought at 155. I'm probably 210 pounds right now. When me and him grapple now, like, we were even when, you know, I first started out at Immortal. that guy can take me down at will, and I can't get back up. Like, and I'm literally twice his size now.
Yeah. That's insane to think of.
Yeah.
Good for him though, man.
There's no one with more potential than that kid.
Nice.
And that's saying a lot, especially, you know, in the area that we're in with all the high level grapplers, all the high level kickboxers. I just don't see many people getting past Josh.
That's huge, dude. Funny enough, Josh was going to make his pro debut for us, and his opponent had a weight cut issue. So it's kind of ironic that the guy Josh was facing struggled with his weight cut and missed weight, and obviously canceled the fight ultimately.
Yeah, the only upside to that is me and you were able to talk about it,
Sure.
and like it made us that much closer.
Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
it made me and Lucas and Josh and all those guys more close. So like,
Yeah,
there is some good that came out of it
for sure.
and I'm
That's
sure
true.
you guys will, you know, end up, you know, linking up with him at some point too.
I think so. Yeah, I saw he just signed with LFA, which is huge, man. Good
Yeah.
for him. That's a big fight, a big opportunity. He's in a 125 is a thin weight class still. We know we have trouble matching 125ers for sure, just because there's not options. There's only so many guys, and somebody like Josh who had what, like 8 amateur fights.
Yeah,
He had a pretty lengthy amateur career.
for a 125.
Yeah, exactly. At this point, he's fought everybody reasonable in the region at least. Like now you do need to go to that national scope of like flying in an opponent or flying in to be the opponent at that stage. So the LFA is going to be a good spot for him, I think. I hope he slays it there. I don't know who he's fighting, but
Yeah, and the problem with 125 is a lot of guys think they can make 125 consistently, and they walk around too heavy.
yep.
I mean, you can only cut so much water being a guy at 125.
Right.
Some females can get away with a little bit more water, but a guy like Josh, you know, he's as big as he can get for that weight class, and you know, he's so dedicated that he'll never miss weight.
Yeah, I can't see that. As
Yeah.
serious as he takes, I just can't imagine. Besides the kind of stuff we talked about earlier where you're super sick or injured
Yeah.
and just can't cut right. Other than that, all things good to go, Josh is making weight.
And I honestly, I think that like he's so dedicated that he'd die on the scale anyway.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a different level right there, dude.
Yeah.
What do you tell your fighters? Because that, I mean, you kind of say it as a joke, but that's a real thing too. Like there's a real danger of dying or at least seriously injuring yourself in a weight cut. So how do you know when somebody is just being mentally weak and when their body is actually telling them they have to stop?
I'll put it this way. I hate tooting my own horn, but if they follow my instructions, they're not missing weight.
Nice.
And I'm not going to have that problem. There are times where I've had guys come close to that, and I'm like, look, I'll sit them down a couple weeks before, and I'll be like, listen, get it together, because you paid me to do this job, and if I have to step in and tell you to get it together, I'm gonna do that. I'm not just the nutrition guy. Sometimes I have to play the role of a mental coach too.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, you're fighting. Fighting's no joke. You know, if you really want to be a champion, want to be a successful fighter, make a living from it, you have to be dedicated to every aspect of this craft. You can't take any of it not serious, and it has to be 100% all in. I mean, that's the reason why I kind of stopped fighting, was because, you know, I'm 31. I'm not far removed from my last fight, but I have to run this business. I, you know, have tons of other things going on in my life. I would like to go back to school and actually go to school for business. There's not enough time in the day for that.
Sure.
But I couldn't just go all out and train, because it would have taken away from the business and all the other aspects of my life. I still train, but I would like to train 24/7, ironically.
Hey, nice.
And there's no way, you know.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. How did you know that like Immortal diet optimization was where you wanted to hang your hat? Because like you said, there is a decision that I think all of us as professionals need to make at some point. You can't be 25% here, 25% here, 25% here. Like it doesn't work for any of the things. Then you got to be all in on something, right? So how'd you know this was the thing?
So working a 9 to 5 sucks. I mean, that's a big part of it. But then, like, on top of that, like, I just started jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai so late that it was like, it's kind of got to be a hobby. You know, if I would have started it, you know, in my teens or whatever, I definitely, like, there's no chance that you're pulling me out of a cage.
Right.
But it's one of those things where, especially in the grappling aspect, you're not going to get to a black belt level overnight. You're not BJ Penn. You know? It's going to take you 10 years. And there's guys who have been, you know, they wrestled from age 6 to age 26. And, like, I know I'm never going to be able to compete with them in that aspect.
Yep.
I mean, standing is a different deal. You know, like, I constantly, when I have downtime, I don't even pick up my guitar anymore. I just study Muay Thai. I'm studying setups and sweeps and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, the grappling, it's just, you have to do it for a long time to get really good at it, and especially to get your cardio up with it.
It's a totally different kind of cardio for sure.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing that I always thought of too, is stand up versus jiu-jitsu. Like, you're not going to go out in a street fight and land a Kimura on somebody if you don't know how to do a Kimura. But you could knock somebody out. Like, we see dudes with no training knock each other out all the time. Any gorilla out there can ball their hand into a fist and wing a punch. But jiu-jitsu, nothing happens by accident. Like, you're not going to accidentally just go armbar somebody if you never did it. So there's that element of, like, you literally can't do this without training. Like, I'm sure you see it too. Fighters who get in who think they're just street fighters, like, they might actually knock somebody out once in a while. That might work once in a while, but it never works on the ground.
Yeah, and I mean, if you really want to, like, it was either do the diet thing or try to make a living out of fighting, and, like, it's just not going to happen because the jiu-jitsu aspect of it, I can get good at it, but there's so many guys out there, especially, like, I was fighting 155. You have to be the best in the world to make a living fighting at 155.
Yeah.
Like,
might be the deepest weight class, I would say, across the board, because we're talking males that weigh around 180 and then they cut to 155. Like, that's your average male. It's the biggest sample size, I would say.
A lot of the guys in the UFC, they're my size still cutting down to 155. Like,
that is nuts, dude.
You hear the rumors of Khabib walking around at 200. You're like,
yes.
How does that guy make 155? Like, even me as the diet guy, I'm like,
I don't know about that. Yeah, we were talking about Alex Pereira. I remember after his last fight. What was he, 230 or something, down to 185?
Unbelievable.
When you see that as a dietitian, what, like, where's your mind go? Do you want to know his secret? Do you want to know what he did? Does it interest you?
I mean, I know what he does. You know what I'm saying? There's no secret in it. It's very, all right. The weird thing about doing a weight cut for a fighter, when you get to that last week, none of it's scientific. It's all bro science. It's all stuff that you had to pick up from, you know, a different person who went through crazy extreme weight cuts, and then take it and make it safe and take the science back from the rehydration aspect. And that's the only science that goes into it. But your body's not supposed to cut, you know, 20, 30 pounds in a week.
Yeah.
No matter what weight class. You could be cutting to make the heavyweight limit, and it's still, you shouldn't be cutting 20 pounds.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy to me that it's worked out so well for him that, A, he hasn't missed weight. I don't think. Has he ever missed weight? Even like in kickboxing?
Not that I know.
Yeah, I don't know of either. But it's crazy when you see guys that do that, and then you see the reverse of that, like the Robert Whitaker, who was fighting at 170 for a while and eventually went up to 185 and performed better. So, like, is that just a case-by-case basis with your athletes? You need to just figure out where their bodies are optimized? Like, how do you know when a guy's cutting too much?
Yeah, so I can kind of take a look at a guy, especially if I met them in person, and it really does help. And I could go, like, a good example is Miles Robinson.
Beast.
Yeah, absolute stud.
Yeah.
Like, killer, hasn't lost since I've started working with him, but that's I mean, he's an animal too. He's like Josh.
Yeah.
He works extremely hard. And not just that, but like he's dedicated to everything else in his life too. He's an amazing father, and he works his 9 to 5 still. So he
awesome.
leaves his 9 to 5, and then he'll either go train at Immortal or he'll go all the way up to Cleveland and train at Strong Style, which is
Maybe
a
the 2
2.5
best
hour
gyms
drive.
in Ohio right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In
No
my
big deal.
in my opinion, and I am a little bit biased, they are the 2 best. But I looked at him when I met him. He was 250. He fights at 170 now. But everyone was telling me, "Oh, he's a 185er," and I looked at them all. I was like, "Nah, he's 170."
That's
And
crazy.
He makes 170 with ease now. And it was just, I could kind of take a look at him and go, that's 170 for sure.
That's
So
interesting.
But it does depend on the person. Sometimes they'll really surprise me, and I'll be like, oh, you know what? You're already on weight. Like, you could go down a weight class. So
I just saw Miles's last fight in Morgantown. I was there. What a performance, man. That dude, I got to talk to him after, thankfully, a little bit, and just let him know he's such a nice, humble kid too. Like, everything you said doesn't surprise me at all. Being a good father, being that dedicated, I totally see that with him.
yeah, I
Pretty
mean,
special.
that's another nice thing about the business is like, I can kind of pick and choose to a certain extent who I want to work with, and I'm not going to work with people who just aren't good people. Like, if I am going to invest my time into working with you, you have to be a good person. And so, like, chances are, if you ask around and you're like, oh, that person has Eddie doing their nutrition,
It's a good dude.
hold on to him. Yeah,
right.
for sure. Like, they're a good dude, and I'm at that point in my life too where I don't want to surround myself with bad people.
Yeah,
So
that's smart. Wise beyond your years.
you learn a lot from Matt.
I'm sure.
So.
I'm sure, man. Being around a guy like that, that's one of the crazier aspects. Did you know him before training at Immortal? Like, how did you meet Matt? What's that situation?
This is a good story.
Nice.
So when I was going through my second Tommy John surgery, there's a scar.
Oh.
I was like, baseball's probably over for me. It was right before the pandemic. I was just trying to find something to keep my mind busy, because when you go through 2 Tommy John surgeries in 2 years, you hit a mental fog where you're like, I need to find something to do, man.
Yeah.
Like, this is driving me nuts, because I just go to physical therapy and then I
So
sit around.
brutal.
Yeah. And I'm like, maybe I'll get back into martial arts. So I'm looking for like local gyms and whatnot. And this was when I moved to Columbus. And I find this gym, and it's fairly new. I was like, it was just open like a few months ago or whatever. And I was like, I'll stop in. And I stop in. It was Immortal Martial Arts Center right here. I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I walked in and I was like, wait a minute. Are those USADA people? It's like, who trains here that would be getting tested by USADA? And then Matt walks out. And he's got the pea cup in his hand.
That's awesome.
He's like, I would shake your hand, but I gotta go take a pee test. And then like a couple months go by and whatnot, and me and him are friendly at that point. But he's talking to someone else, and he's like, I gotta go work on my house later. And I'm like, man, what do you got to do? And he's like, I just got a bunch of projects that I got to work on and whatnot. I'm like, don't you live like 10 minutes down the road from me? I was like, I'll come help out.
Yeah.
And I just went and helped out, and like helping out turned into us lifting together, and then us lifting together turned into us picking each other's brains and whatnot, and then into a business.
That's awesome, man. And you both play guitar and like metal too. That had to help, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because there was workout sessions when we're in his garage and we're just dripping sweat, and both of us look at each other and we just go, all right, that's enough. Yeah. Like the Lamb of God's blasting on the speaker and whatnot. And we're like, all right, we can't take no more.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
But that's what you need for somebody like that to help push him. I mean, I'm sure you've been instrumental in his success. I know you're not going to take any part of his success, but I'm sure you helped, man. Like, I'm sure that's a huge part of it.
Nah, man, that dude's just a savage.
Would have done
like,
it.
Yeah, like there's certain people, you know, that are just absolutely destined to do big things with their life. I hope that I'm one of those people, and I'm going to work as hard as I can to be one of those people. But Matt, you could take a look at that dude. And
Yeah.
Go, oh, he's an absolute animal. And like, there's nothing that he does in life where he's not an absolute animal and he's not fully invested. He's fully invested in being a great dad. He's fully invested in being the best martial artist he can be. He's fully invested in being a better guitar player and, you know, being as strong as he can. So like, you know, like it's got nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
If I tell him to do something with his nutrition, he just does it. And then like, he doesn't question it. But that's because he's just, he trusts me, and he also trusts that he's going to put in that work.
Right.
So,
which is huge. You calling him an animal, all I can think of is Forrest Griffin on The Ultimate Fighter yelling at him to unleash the animal. Do you know that clip?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I was going to say, you guys got to talk about that, right?
I mean,
classic.
Like, so we really don't talk fighting all that much.
That
because
honestly makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have so much in common that, like, I'll call him and we'll just shoot the crap for like hours on end. And it's like, we're good friends on top of being business partners, which
huge.
Like, yeah. And like, we just have so much in common that like, there's sometimes where we'll clash because we're like, I like this band. And he's like, oh, that band sucks, dude. You know, like,
friendly clashes, the kind you want with Matt Brown. I don't think you want an unfriendly clash with Matt Brown.
No. I mean, I'll clash with him any day of the week in the weight room, but like on the mats, I'm like, man, I don't even like sparring with that dude because
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of people that I've sparred with over the years that like just please take it as easy as possible on me. You know, him and Miles are like two of the top ones that come to mind. I'm like, yeah, I hate going rounds with you two.
Dude, the guy Miles beat is a savage. He's fought for us a few times. We know him pretty well, Tom Kaiser, and I love that dude. I think he's awesome and going to do great things. But like we were saying, he just ran into a buzzsaw that night with Miles. He was different. Miles was on a different level that night.
He's got different power, man. I mean, anyone he touches, it's the same thing over and over. It's like Alex Pereira. He touches you, you just go night, night, man. And it's crazy because you look at Miles and you go, oh, he's a big dude, but like, I don't see nothing crazy about him. But then you see him in the weight room and he's deadlifting 700 pounds. And you're like,
yeah.
Oh, man, that's why everyone goes night, night. Because his power's just different.
Weird power. Yeah. Which Matt has that too.
Yeah.
In terms of, I don't know what his lifting is like, but for sure his knockout power. I mean, like we were saying, tied the UFC record. He has that touch, so to speak.
Yep. His is so there's different kinds of strength, and like I have the explosive strength, and Matt has this tensile strength that like it's really weird. When he gets a hold of you, it's unlike anything you've ever felt. Like him and Coleman specifically.
I was going to say, I've heard him say that about Coleman.
Yeah.
When Coleman grabs you, it's like, what is happening to me right now?
Yeah, but the thing Matt doesn't realize is he's the same way. Like,
nice.
it's like, it's specifically like being grabbed by an animal, like being grabbed by a gorilla that you're like, oh, there's no getting away from this. Like,
it's terrifying.
Matt takes me down and he'll go, why aren't you getting up? Like, and he's not trying. He's not breathing heavy or nothing. And you're like, because I physically can't. No matter what I do, I could do everything perfectly technical. I could be as explosive as I want. I'm not getting up when you grab me.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That is so wild. And is that just like, is that genetic to a degree? What do you think it is about Matt that gives him that?
It's a combination of both genetics and the way that he trains. Like, Some people, they have more slow twitch muscles. Some people have the fast twitch. I've always been a very fast twitch person. If you tell me to go run a mile, it's not going to be very fast. But if you tell me to sprint 100 yards, even I don't sprint anymore, but I could still do it at a pretty solid pace for someone who's not doing sprints.
Right.
Matt's the opposite way. You tell him to go run a mile, he could probably still do it in 6 minutes or something if he wanted to. And he doesn't even like run that often, you know? So it's just different people have different genetic abilities, but they also can kind of train away from them if they want. And, you know, I play baseball my whole life, so I trained to be explosive. I didn't train cardio because the furthest distance that you're running is 360 feet.
Sure.
Like you don't, and maybe you'll run on back-to-back plays if you have to chase down a fly ball. But
yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, it's very rare that you're going to have to run a mile.
Yeah. I always think of it like football players. This always blew my mind. But I don't know. Who's your team? Who's your football team? Do you have a team?
I do. I like the Dolphins and the Hurricanes, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah. Solid. I'll let that slide. That's fine. That's totally fine. I didn't want you to be a Browns fan or a Bengals fan, or so that's what I was going to avoid. But I was going to say, in the Steelers Super Bowl against the Cardinals, James Harrison, linebacker, got an interception and 101 yards for a touchdown. And dude, he was so gassed at the end of that run. And I was sitting there, I was either first year in college or senior in high school, and like in decent shape, was in track and stuff. I'm like, how can he not run 100 yards? Like, he looks like he just died after running 100 yards. But it's exactly what you said. They're trained for 3 seconds of explosive movement, play resets. 3 more seconds of explosive movement, play resets. When he had to run 100 yards, it was like you asked him to run 8 miles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was so unusual for his type of conditioning. Blew my mind.
And it's funny because he trains with a buddy of mine, Dalton Ross, though, from time to time.
There you go. Nice.
Me and him went to YSU together. And Dalton, he's that explosive, but also has the cardio to go
Dalton's
3 rounds every
Dalton's
fight.
A freak.
He's a specimen and a half.
Yeah.
And you know, there's been people who talk online of like him possibly being on something, and I'm like, dude, he's looked the same way since I met the dude. I mean, he's never changed. His physique has always been that of like a Paulo Costa.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it just absolutely shredded, can go 5 rounds if he wants to, can be as explosive as he wants to. He's one of those anomalies. Like,
It's so insane.
if you look at baseball, you see guys like Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge.
Yep.
Those dudes are anomalies. Dalton is that in MMA.
Yeah, and I mean, his career obviously is showing it so far. Does he have a fight scheduled? I thought. Does he have one?
He's got something coming up.
thought I just saw that,
remember
yeah.
what it is.
Well,
So,
it's got to be like a #1 contender fight. I mean, he's got nothing left at this point other than the belt, I feel like. But his teammate has the belt, so that's an issue.
yeah, and I don't get into that stuff. Like, if you want to fight your teammate, go ahead. But that's, I personally could never do it. But also, at a big gym like American Top Team with so many good fighters, you kind of know that it might happen at some point.
Yeah, it's certainly on the table. Like, you got to be thinking about that. There's only so many elite 185-pound guys in Bellator, and if you're 2 of them, you got to, like, our paths are going to cross.
Yeah, like, Miguel and Lucas, no matter what the weight class is, they're not fighting each other.
Right.
They live together.
I was going to say, it's different. They not only train together, they live together. That's a different level.
It's the same with, like, Lucas and Josh Pereira.
Yeah.
Like, if Josh ever has to go up to 135, he's not accepting a fight against Lucas because their friendship is super close. But at a gym like American Top Team, you're not going to have as much closeness with your teammates because there's so many. Yeah, the mats are flooded with hundreds of dudes.
That was one of the craziest experiences. When I worked for Flow Combat, we went on a road trip to American Top Team and just interviewed, I don't even know, dude, 20, 30 different people while we were there. And just the scope and the quantity and the quality they have there doesn't even make sense. Like, you walk in, it's like, oh, here's 10 UFC fighters that I see right here in this corner of the gym.
Yeah, and they're all in the top 5. In different
they're all
divisions.
super legit.
Yeah, this guy's got a belt, and then you look over in the trophy case, and there's the BMF belt, and it's unbelievable the amount of talent that is in a gym like that. And there's a few gyms like that, but honestly, you're gonna see something like that happening with Pittsburgh and Columbus and Cleveland here real soon, because the wrestling talent that comes out of Ohio and PA is unmatched from anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, so when I'm training down in Florida, they're like, "Oh, you're from Ohio? You can wrestle." I'm like, No.
I'm not one of them.
Like, I didn't wrestle in high school. I didn't wrestle in college. Like, those guys wrestled their whole lives. Like, I just learned from Matt, as much as I can. I tried to be a sponge, but there's only so much that I could do to catch up with those guys.
For sure.
So
yeah, it's like you were saying earlier. These people who have been doing it from 6 to 26, invaluable. That's any sport, to be fair.
Yeah,
like any elite golfer started playing when they could barely walk. That's just how it works.
Exactly. And those guys can wrestle, but if we stepped onto a baseball field, I'd strike them all out.
Right.
Just because that's what I did my whole life.
Right.
It's not that I'm not even high level. I tried out with a couple of pro teams, but it's nowhere near the guys who are pitching. I topped it out at 93. Those guys are topping out at 105 now.
Yeah.
That's
I've seen
insane
that,
to even
nuts.
fathom. And they're releasing the ball probably 3-4 feet closer to the plate than I would, because they're 6'5". I'm only 5'10".
That's a good point.
Yeah. So I'm not an elite level guy in baseball, but for them to cross over into that sport, it's just the same as me trying to get better at wrestling. It's going to take a long, long time.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't replace those reps, man. That if you've done it your whole life, something about it. Especially I think young minds and bodies just learn faster too. You can miss the boat on stuff to a degree.
To a degree,
Yeah.
I mean, there's guys like Matt where,
He's just different. He's the anomaly, like you
he
said.
learns so fast.
Yeah.
I'll watch him train a technique for 5 minutes, and then he's got it down. Doesn't have to train it that much anymore. He'll just get the repetitions on the pads, and he could go into a fight and hit it.
That's crazy. That's him, like you were saying, though. Guitar as well. I'm sure he learns songs faster than most dudes who try to play guitar. That's just how his brain is. Yeah.
Exactly. If he went and tried to learn this intricate thing, he could learn it in 10 minutes, whereas people who've played longer than him, it'd take them days.
Well, that's why he's tying UFC records and maybe soon to break them, right?
I think so. Especially after knowing him for this long, and the guy deserves it.
For sure.
They don't put enough respect on his name because he hasn't won a belt. But what they don't realize is he's been doing this longer than anyone now. It's him and Jim Miller.
Jim Miller, yeah,
which
exactly.
You like to match make. Jim Miller called him out. I think that would be... Jim Miller said, "I'll go up to 170 and fight a guy like Matt Brown."
Really? Oh, dude.
I would love that
Let's
fight.
do it.
With all due respect to Jim Miller, he don't want to do that. He just don't want to,
Dude, I love both those guys. That would kill me for whoever lost. Yeah, but it's a great fight, honestly. I would love 100%, to see that. Yeah.
And I think he said that he wanted to get one more in before UFC 300, because Jim Miller have fought on 100, 200, 300, which is awesome. But then,
So
if you're
nuts.
Matt to hype that fight up, you go, "I fought on UFC 97.
Yeah, right. That is a crazy thing with Jim Miller's career, and he's been saying that for years, man, that he wanted 100. So kudos to him. His longevity is nuts. Matt, they're unparalleled in that regard. It doesn't make sense, honestly.
And Matt's had injuries. I don't think Jim Miller's ever had a crazy injury.
Yeah, I think he was just talking about that, actually. He had a weird eye injury, some weird stuff, but nothing catastrophic.
Yeah,
in terms
which
of
is insane to think of. You've been fighting for just as long as Matt, and Nothing.
New Jersey wilderness builds them different out there,
just
man.
the backwoods of New Jersey.
Sick family. I mean, obviously Dan and their dad. We actually went. Funny enough, another like MMA road trip we did when I was working for Bleacher Report though at the time. We went camping with the Miller family. Their dad, Dan, and Jim.
Oh, that's unreal.
Dude, it was so good. One of the best experiences of my life, honestly, and especially at that time, like a young journalist trying to make a name in that scene. Like just being around those guys like that, it was crazy. But their dad is like 6'5", 250, 60, just an ox. They're like our dad is the strongest guy we've ever met in our lives. And meanwhile, they're both in the UFC at the time. Like, dude, our dad would still kick our ass right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you have that influence, like that influence for Matt is Mark Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yep.
Coleman, the practices that Coleman was leading, I thought I was going to pass out every single time. Because here's the thing. You go as hard as you possibly can, and then he's still yelling, and you're like, well, I can't slow down. You know what I'm saying? Like Mark Coleman is instructing me right now. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you don't work out. If Mark Coleman's yelling at you, you're going.
Yep.
There's no stopping you. So I could only imagine like having that dude as your dad. You know what I'm saying?
Insane. Yeah.
Like there's no... He'll wake you up in the middle of the night. He probably did. He probably stood over his bed and was like, hey, Jimmy
Let's
boy,
go.
get up. Let's go. You know? So,
that's how you get, however, what's he at? Like 35 UFC fights or something insane like that?
something astronomical.
How
man.
many does Matt have?
I think he's close to 30.
Yeah,
maybe?
I would imagine. That's so nuts. When was his debut? It was the Ultimate Fighter finale, right? Like whichever season.
It was season 7,
okay.
I believe.
Which is crazy because they're on like 30 or 31 now.
Yeah, I mean it's unparalleled.
That doesn't even make sense, man. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he didn't have much of a combat background, really, did he? He wasn't. He had like nothing, right?
No. He tells the story, man. You'll have to look up like old stories that he put out on like all kinds of podcasts and whatnot. But like some guys just asked him if he wanted to go to a fight, and he was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I guess like the champion of that small organization didn't like their opponent dropped out, and they were like, does anyone want to fight him? And Matt was like, I'll fight the dude. Which is like the most Matt thing you've ever heard in your life.
Yeah, that's so ridiculous.
Yeah, and I guess like that's how he got started.
Okay.
And like he wasn't training or anything at the time. He beat the dude, and then, you know, he ended up finding a gym locally, and that's how, you know, it all started. And I think actually...
So nuts.
So I think that first gym that he went into was a gym that Dorian Price was training at.
Okay.
Dorian's another great friend of mine. I got to spend a lot of time with him and Matt
Nice.
this past week. And Dorian is one of my favorite humans to listen to talk about Muay Thai. I mean, he was sitting there talking with Henry Hooft, and I was just a fly on the wall for this conversation.
That would be an awesome conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and like he had asked me to like take video of it, so like I have the video of it, and I can go back and look at it, and like just to even be in the presence of greatness that I was in this past week was unbelievable. Let alone getting to hear conversations like that.
Huge.
And like, you know, be there with a weight cut for Matt and whatnot, and like. I'm like, look, man, don't let me get in the way. You guys are all, you've been doing this for so long. Like, just tell me what I need to do.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to take away from anything. You
For
know
sure.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
That makes a lot of sense.
It was a blessing, man.
Huge. It's cool to me that you're working with a guy like Matt, who, as we've established, obviously a UFC legend, all the way down to amateur fighters. And we're working with Lucas, I want to say, did you work with Lucas on his debut?
Oh,
Were
yeah.
you even then?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole way down to debuting amateurs, like that's a really interesting spread of clients, I feel like. What made you be like, I need to focus on everybody, not just high-level pros or people I think I'll make money off of, to put it bluntly?
Because it's not about the money. I mean, it is because it's a business, and
Yeah.
I want to get out of my 9 to 5. I don't want to ever work a 9 to 5 again. But at the same time, like, I had just started volunteering at, Matt's gym. I wasn't in there to make any money from it. I was just like, these guys don't have anyone. I am pretty good at helping these guys. And I was like, man, someone's got to step up and just be there for them. And like, it was pretty much Josh, Miles, Lucas that I had just started volunteering to help out. And like, I worked with them because I also saw the potential that they had in the gym. And I was like, man, you guys would just be so much better if you had that nutrition. Because a crazy part of fighting, well, any athletic performance that people don't realize is if you're 2% under or over hydrated, so either way, it leads to a 10% decrease in athletic capabilities.
Wow.
Yeah. They've done studies like just that small amount is enough to make you not perform anywhere near your best. So to be able to help those guys out, I know just by the science that it makes this massive difference in how they're able to train, how they're able to fight. And it's that confidence too of knowing you have someone in your corner that's going to help you out, just makes you fight that much more confident, makes fight week that much easier. And, I continue to work with the amateurs because I want to see everyone succeed. Like if I run into a good person who just happens to fight, I'm like, man, I just want to help you out. You know what I'm saying? And like, obviously there's a business aspect to it, but like, I almost don't care about that just because I love helping out,
Has that always been the case with you? You just want to help people out? You've always had that kind of bone in you, so to speak, of just wanting to watch other people succeed?
Yeah, it comes from baseball. And like, so in baseball, it's a complete team sport. So if you have one weak link on the baseball team, the whole team suffers. If someone's negative in the dugout, it's going to bring the whole team down. None of you guys are going to hit. So when I would go out there, I would always be the first person to like pick someone up. If they're having bad at bats in a game, I'm like, hey, it's okay. We're gonna get the repetitions. You're gonna swing yourself out of this slump that you're in. Or if they made an error in the outfield, I'd be like, it's all right. We're gonna go get the bats. We're gonna make up for that.
Right.
It's all gonna be okay. And like, I just love being a good teammate. And I prided myself on that more than even being a good player, because I knew that if I was a good teammate, it would help me get recognized, even if I was an average player at best. So that was the goal, was just, I'm going into this MMA gym. I want to be a good teammate. So if a guy was, upset at, how they were training that day, or, something that's going on in their personal life outside of the gym, I was always the first one to go over to him and just be like, look, man, it's going to be okay. You got a great cast of people supporting you, and like, we're all here for you. Even if other things are going wrong in your life, you have that backbone of this team that's going to surround you, and we're all going to help out.
That's huge. I think that's a really interesting layer, because on the surface, fight dietitian, is that what you would call yourself? Fight nutritionist? What would you call it?
I'm just the nutrition guy, man.
Nutrition guy. I like that. Very official. Yeah. The fight nutrition guy. At its core, guys want to make weight. But with you, they're getting that extra benefit of you actually care about all these guys. You want them to succeed. You don't just want them to make weight. You want to go watch them win fights and advance their career and accomplish their goals. I think that's a cool layer to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a family to me at this point, because I didn't really have a close family like my entire life. So I was blessed with having the best friends you could ever ask for, and like some great mentors, like Bruce Davis. This is I have to shout this man out. No one knows who this man is. He's the greatest human on the face of this earth. Not only is he ex-Navy, he went to school after, got his teaching degree, his education degree, took that, got his PhD, has a black belt in Taekwondo, a black belt in Jeet Kune Do. Then, teaches for his entire life. But then at age 68, he goes back to school because he finds out that all of his friends are going into nursing homes. This has choked me up thinking about this. All his friends are going into nursing homes, and he goes, I'm going to go back to school. Age 68, gets his nursing degree just to go take care of his friends. While he's getting that nursing degree, his wife has brain cancer. So
Unreal.
She gets over it. And then it comes back. She's got cancer for a second time. And obviously he has to stop doing that to take care of her. But that just adds to the legend of like how great of a human this dude is. And no one knows who he is, but he was the greatest influence in my life. Like, I lost my dad at 15. So when I lost my dad, I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. I'm 15 years old. There's no one who really knows, what I'm going through. So he sits me down the one day. He goes, hey, what's going on? So I tell him, and he was just there for me from day one. Like, my mom isn't in the best health, and he offered to help take care of her, like, while I'm living down in Florida.
Unbelievable.
Like, just the greatest human I will ever come into contact with. It was great catching up with him this week, too. I'll probably go see him again tomorrow just because, like, he's the man.
How old is he now?
He's 75.
And just still getting it.
Dude, he's jacked. He's okay. Nice. So even crazier, he's the first one that got me into working out and into martial arts.
Okay.
He trained with the Gracies.
Unbelievable.
Like, on top of being a black belt in 2 different martial arts, like, he's trained jiu-jitsu before. And my senior year, I just wanted to get better at baseball. The guy pulls me into his classroom. He goes, hey, is this really what you want to do? I go, yeah, I literally don't care about anything else at this point. I'm all in on this. I ended up tearing my elbow in my senior year, didn't get surgery for 8 years after it.
Oh.
Yeah, so I was playing baseball with a torn UCL. Yeah. But he was like, all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to start working out. And he went over to his cabinet, pulled out a set of perfect push-ups. And I still have them.
That's awesome.
He goes, look, just start with these. You don't need to do anything crazy, because if you go crazy with it, you're going to fall out of love with working out. Mm-hmm. But if you start slow, you build up, you just keep going every day, you'll want to do more. Come talk to me when you want to do more.
Nice.
And it led to me being absolutely obsessed with fitness and nutrition and everything. Yeah. Like, it's all a credit to him. And I don't think he realizes the impact that he's had on this world. So I just had to shout him out for being the greatest human on earth.
People like that deserve shine, man, because
100%.
Like you said, nobody would know who he was. I mean, in this area, and even a little more, the guy on our Hall of Fame plaque there, your whole time talking about him, it reminds me of Isaac Greeley a lot. He's the most pure heart you'll ever meet. Literally just wants to help people at every turn, will do everything he can to help people. And he's one of those guys that, like, seems like he has more than 24 hours in his days. You know what I mean? Like, he does so much, and it's like, how are you possibly pulling this off?
How did you accomplish all this?
And you talking about Bruce, just same exact thing. Like, how are you possibly getting your PhD and then going back and having a what? Like, how does this work?
Dude, I didn't even, like, there's so much that he's done. I didn't even realize, like, I missed out on this whole part. He's an amazing artist. Like, I have his artwork at my house because, like, he doesn't stop drawing or painting or anything.
Crazy.
He's got so much artwork in his house that I'm like, dude, if they put this in a museum, everyone would be like, this is one of the greatest artists I've ever seen. Like, on top of everything else that he's accomplished.
Unreal.
It's crazy.
Well, I'm super glad that you got to shout him out, because that dude clearly deserves the shine.
For sure.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Good place to end it, dude. Legends all over your life, and I'm personally excited to see where you take yours too, man, because you're still new to this. It seems like, you know, you have a good blueprint going on. It's really exciting. Every fighter that we mention, obviously we talk to all those guys. They have nothing but good things to say about you. I personally have nothing but good things to say about you as somebody who's gone through it. And more than that, like you said, just being a good dude, just wanting to help people, good energy at every turn. You were texting me a few times throughout the weight cut, like just motivating me. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's another thing, man. Like, I always make sure that, like, if I kind of get a glimpse of like them maybe being a little bit tired, I'll just send them something.
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, yeah.
Buck them up. Little David Goggins action.
Who's going to carry the boat?
Exactly. And I'm like, you're damn right, Eddie. You're damn right. I don't need to make weight really, but I'm gonna.
Yeah. You're like, I can't miss it now.
Dude. And it felt extra good. Danny quit. This guy quit. Ryan quit. Jim quit. Everybody else quit.
Damn it, Danny. Get it together.
I had to. I'm sorry, Danny Palm. I had to call him out while Eddie was in the room.
To be fair, I didn't want to do it from the get-go.
Very true. He actually never really agreed, to be fair. Yeah. He was like, no, you guys are dumb. I'm not doing this.
You got to have the motivation to do it.
Absolutely.
And that's why I like working with fighters. They want to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's hard to work with the average everyday person because they may not even really want to do it. They may like where they're at, but you know, people are telling them, hey, you got to get better. You got to want it for yourself.
Yep. That's nailed it, dude. Well, anybody looking to get started with you, we'll plug this. How should they reach out to you?
You could go on the website, immortaldietoptimization.com. You could fill out the questionnaire. You could go on Instagram, Facebook, just Immortal Diet Optimization on either of them. You could go to my personal Instagram, Savage Mentality 35, or, you know, if you run into one of the guys that I work with already or the girls that I work with, don't want to forget about them. You know, they'll give you my number and you could get a hold of me.
Nice. And I want to be extremely clear for viewers. This is not a sponsorship. Nothing was paid for you to say these things. I'm not getting paid to talk good about you, but it was genuinely a great experience, and we see it all the time. Guys missing weight, guys needing help with their diets and nutrition. I do think you are a legit answer for them.
Thank you so much, man, because when I get that feedback, you know, from you, anyone that I work with, that's what makes the job worthwhile. So
yeah.
I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate that, brother.
Nice, dude. Well, thanks for coming in, man. We'll run it back very soon.
Absolutely,
Hell
man.
yeah. Good shit, dude.